It's estimated that every minute someone receives the devastating diagnosis of Alzheimer's. But while most focus is on finding a cure, could prevention be the most effective way to fight this disease? Join us via Skype is Dr. Michael Murphy, the Associate Director at Sanders Brown Center on Aging at the University of Kentucky. So, Dr. Murphy, thank you for joining us. Can you discuss why most drugs have failed when it comes to treating Alzheimer's disease in trials?
I think what's really going on here is that a lot of our focus has been on clearing what's called amyloid in the brain. And our prevailing idea for what's been causing the disease has been that this has been kind of the driver for Alzheimer's, has been pushing the disease forward the whole time. And all of our therapeutics have been geared towards working on clearing this amyloid from the brain. And really what we should probably be thinking of is more like the amyloid is something like being injured by a bullet. So there's a trigger that fires a bullet into the brain and it damages the brain. And a lot of our clinical trials have been focused on just clearing that initial injury or that initial trigger for the disease and haven't been much concerned with the fallout from that injury.
Dr. Murphy, I want to ask you, if we've struggled so much in clinical trials in terms of treatment of Alzheimer's, where do you see things going forward in terms of, hopefully not only better detection, but better early treatment?
So there's several things you can do there. It's absolutely true that things like diet and exercise are critically important. But one thing that's also super important is if we can move our detection back. And there have been a lot of advances in how we can detect Alzheimer's at a very early age. So we can actually use medical imaging nowadays to detect Alzheimer's pathology developing 15 to 20 years before anyone has any memory problems in the brain. And that's really important because as we get closer to understanding how to better manage the disease, that early detection combined with a lot of things like lifestyle changes could be one of the most powerful ways to manage the disease later on.
There's been some really fascinating studies that have been done. One was done last year and it was published and it was called the Sprint Mind Study. And what it looked at is hypertension as a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. And so we know that now if we can keep our systolic number at 120 and maintain that, we will reduce our risk because we know that 50% of all dementia and Alzheimer's, it starts with leaky blood vessels in the brain, and that's caused by hypertension.
That's absolutely true. One thing that we're working towards, I think, is really important. If we can improve our imaging even more and get our detection threshold at a level that we can be absolutely sure that someone is going to get Alzheimer's disease in 10 to 15 years, then it just becomes something that's more like when you're 50 years old and you go for something like a colonoscopy to say that, oh, you have incipient colon cancer or something like that, you can say, well, at the same time that you're getting a colonoscopy, we typically will now combine that with a scan for amyloid, and we can tell that you might have early Alzheimer's disease. And because we know so much about how to prevent the disease or treat it from an early stage, we'll have ways to do that. And in fact, we may already have a lot of those things.